One of the things that's increasingly more and more important to job seekers is making sure they have work-life balance. And this means not working incredibly long hours that takes time away from your family or things that you're passionate about. But how do you go about asking them in an interview? It can actually be really challenging. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through that process so you can do it in the best way possible from a recruiter's perspective. Let's go. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the why. Why is this important? Why are we making this video? Well, one, if work-life balance is really important to you, well, then it makes sense that you want to know this before accepting an offer, before moving into an organization. The last thing you want to do is accept a role, get in there, and then you're required to work crazy hours that don't allow you to have that work-life balance that's so important to you. So that's why figuring it out on the front end is critical, because you don't want to find yourself in that situation. It's a lot easier to avoid accepting an offer with a company that doesn't have work-life balance than to accept that, handle it, navigate it, find a new job, start that new job, and then hope that they also don't have terrible work-life balance. So that's why it's important. So now let's talk about the risk. The risk around asking in your interview about work-life balance, about long working hours, is that certain hiring managers are going to perceive you as not a hard worker, or you're someone who's not committed, or you're afraid of working hard or working longer hours. And a few things. One, that is unfair. It's unfair to assume that about someone who just wants to make sure they have work-life balance. It's also inaccurate. Just because someone wants balance doesn't mean they're afraid of hard work. What it means is they want to work hard during working hours, and when working hours are done, they want to go and enjoy the rest of their life. People who, they live to live, not live to work. They want to make sure there's that separation, there's that balance. But it's really important to ask the message, or ask the question rather, in a good way, so you aren't adversely impacted as a candidate and you don't lose out on an otherwise good opportunity just because you wanted to make sure it had work-life balance. By the way, if you're finding value in this video, do me a favor and hit that like button. It tells YouTube that I don't suck. It helps the channel a ton. It motivates me to make more videos. Also, while you're here, hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss one of my 3 free weekly videos that are all designed to help you land your dream job and maximize your career. Now I want to talk about the realization. The realization is, if you ask this question, if you ask a question about work-life balance, if you ask a question about, hey, how long are the working hours, right? And this person, the hiring manager, is offended by what you say, if they are off-put by the question, if they jump to conclusions that you're not going to be a good worker, odds are this probably isn't a person you want to work for anyway, especially if work-life balance is important to you. Because someone who is going to make the logical leap that they've asked about work-life balance, they're a bad worker, is probably going to be an incredibly challenging manager to work for. This is one of those things where if you really value it, then you have to prioritize it and you have to ask the question, because if you don't, it could be a really bad situation for you. And if you ask the question and they're the type of manager who's going to truly be off-put by it and not hire you because of it, well, they probably weren't going to be a good fit for the work-life balance you're hoping to achieve anyway. Now I want to talk about the ask, which is probably why you watched this video to begin with, but it's how do you ask this without being adversely impacted by a candidate, without looking like you're afraid of hard work or you're not a good fit. And the way I would recommend asking it is by prefacing your question like this. One of the things that is really important to me is work-life balance. Could you describe to me what a realistic week looks like for someone on this team and what kind of hours a successful person typically works? A few things here. You're stating that work-life balance is important to you, right? So you're just letting them know the reason I'm asking is because that balance is important to me, which they should get, they should understand. That preface it kind of brings them back to reality, like, oh yeah, well that's a reasonable thing to ask. And then you're asking, what does the average week look like for someone on this team? That's not saying how long are the shifts, but it's getting at the same information. And it's saying it in a way that should be less off-putting to them, if it is to begin with. And then lastly, you're asking, what does a successful person, what does their week look like from an hours perspective? And this is important because you're framing it in terms of success. Like, hey, I want to be successful. What does a successful person work? And that way they shouldn't be off-put by it, and they can let you know what it's going to require to be successful working in this environment. Well, now you should be prepared to ask about this absolutely critical part of working. Speaking of preparation, you should be preparing for job interviews like this Well, that's the video. I tell you how you should prepare for job interviews to maximize your preparation time and increase the likelihood of succeeding as a candidate. So I am done here, but I will see you over there.